Lisa Hayes stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge and watched as the alien station grew larger on the viewing screen. She had trained her whole life for this moment, humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization. The station was massive, bigger than Earth's moon, covered in lights that pulsed with colors she had never seen before. The radio crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect English, though something about it sounded artificial. "Human vessel, you are cleared to dock at Platform 7. Welcome to the Celestial Dominion. We have been waiting for you." Lisa exchanged glances with her second officer, Daniel Cooper. He looked as nervous as she felt. "Acknowledged," she replied. "We are honored to be here." The docking process was smooth. Too smooth. Their ship was guided in by invisible forces that took control of their navigation systems. Lisa didn't like that, but she said nothing. They were guests here. They had to follow the rules. When the airlock opened, Lisa led her team of 12 officers into the station. The corridor beyond was enormous, with ceilings at least 50 feet high. Aliens of dozens of different species walked past, barely glancing at the humans. Some had 4 legs, some had tentacles, others looked almost human except for their skin colors or extra eyes. None of them seemed surprised to see humans. A tall alien approached them. It had blue skin and 3 eyes arranged in a triangle on its face. It wore robes that shimmered like oil on water. "Commander Hayes," it said, bowing slightly. "I am Coordinator Vess. I will escort you to the Council of Hierarchs. They are eager to meet your species." Lisa and her team followed Vess through the station. The place was beautiful but strange. Everything was too clean, too organized. The aliens they passed all moved with purpose. No one lingered or chatted. Everyone seemed to know exactly where they were going and what they were doing. They entered a massive chamber. At the far end sat 4 beings on raised platforms. These were clearly the leaders. One looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. Another was a crystalline structure that shifted colors. The third appeared to be made of living metal. The fourth looked almost like a very old human, except its eyes were completely black. "Humans," the jellyfish being spoke, and its voice filled the entire chamber without being loud. "We are the hierarchs of the Celestial Dominion. We speak for 15,000 species across 14,000 star systems. We have watched your species for some time. You have finally achieved faster than light travel. You are ready to join galactic society." Lisa felt her heart race. This was it. The moment that would define humanity's future among the stars. "We are honored," she said carefully. "We come in peace and friendship." "Of course you do," the crystalline hierarch said. Its voice sounded like wind chimes. "All species come in peace. That is why our dominion has existed for 50,000 years without war. We have perfected harmony." The metal hierarch gestured, and a holographic document appeared in front of Lisa. "This is the Accord of Integration. By signing this, humanity will become members of the Dominion. You will be classified as a Tier 7 species, as all newcomers are. You will receive technology, protection, and access to trade networks spanning the galaxy." Lisa studied the document. It was thousands of pages long, written in legal language that was hard to understand. But certain phrases caught her attention. Genetic optimization protocols, neural compliance standards, behavioral modification requirements. "What exactly is genetic optimization?" Lisa asked. The old humanoid hierarch smiled, but the smile didn't reach its black eyes. "Nothing to worry about. Simply adjustments to make your species more compatible with galactic society. All Tier 7 species undergo these modifications. It removes tendencies toward violence and territorial aggression. You will find it makes your people much happier." Something cold settled in Lisa's stomach. "You want to change our DNA?" "Only for the better," Vess said quickly. "Look around you, Commander. Do you see any conflict, any suffering? That is because we have eliminated the biological causes of such problems. Every species that joins us is improved." Lisa looked at the aliens in the chamber. Now that she was really looking, she noticed something. They all had the same expression. Calm, pleasant, empty, like people who had been sedated but were still walking around. How many species have refused the accord? Lisa asked. The four hierarchs were silent for a moment. Then, the jellyfish being spoke. In the entire history of the Dominion, no species has refused integration. Resistance is always temporary. Those who initially refuse eventually understand. The accord is not an option, Commander Hayes. It is inevitable. And if we say no? The metal hierarch's surface rippled. That would be unfortunate. Species that exist outside the Dominion are considered dangerous. For the safety of our member species, we would be forced to quarantine your entire civilization. No trade, no communication, no travel beyond your own star system. Eventually, isolation drives species to accept integration. It always has. Lisa felt anger rising in her chest. They were being threatened, politely but clearly. Join us, or be imprisoned in your own solar system. We need time to consider this, she said. Of course, the crystalline hierarch said. You have 48 hours. We have prepared quarters for your delegation. Rest, explore our station, speak with other species. You will see that the Dominion offers only benefits. Lisa and her team were escorted to luxurious rooms. The moment the door closed, Daniel turned to her. Commander, did you see their eyes? All of them. Every alien we passed. Something is wrong with them. I know, Lisa said. She pulled out a small scanner from her uniform. It was against protocol to scan their hosts, but she didn't care. She needed answers. Over the next day, Lisa and her team investigated quietly. They talked to aliens from dozens of species. Every conversation felt wrong. The aliens were polite, helpful, and completely incapable of discussing anything negative about the Dominion. When Lisa asked about life before integration, they looked confused, as if they couldn't remember. Dr. Helen Grant, the team's medical officer, managed to scan several aliens without being noticed. What she found made everyone in the delegation sick. Every alien had implants in their brains. Small devices attached to the parts of the brain that controlled independent thought and emotional response. They're not free, Helen whispered during a private meeting in their quarters. These implants are suppressing their ability to think critically. They can function, they can be happy, but they can't question anything. They can't imagine being anything other than what the hierarchs want them to be. Lisa spent a sleepless night thinking. Humanity had finally reached the stars, only to find that the galaxy was one giant prison. A beautiful, peaceful prison where everyone smiled and no one was free. The next morning, she made her decision. She stood before the Council of Hierarchs and spoke clearly. Humanity rejects the Accord of Integration. The chamber fell silent. The four hierarchs stared at her with what might have been surprise. No one had ever said no before. Then you have chosen isolation, the jellyfish hierarch said. No, Lisa said loudly. We choose freedom. She to the horizon's edge jumped through space 3 times before Lisa felt safe enough to slow down. Her hands were shaking. She had just made humanity the enemy of 15,000 alien species. Behind her, Daniel was checking their systems for tracking devices, while the rest of the crew worked in tense silence. Where do we go? Daniel asked. Earth needs to know what's coming, Lisa nodded. Set course for the Kepler colony. It's closer, and we need to warn the outer settlements first. The Dominion will send ships to Earth, but they'll want to cut off our colonies too. The journey took 6 days. 6 days of waiting for Dominion warships to appear behind them. 6 days of Lisa barely sleeping, going over everything that had happened. She kept seeing those empty eyes, all those species that couldn't even remember what freedom felt like. Kepler 442 was a mining colony, home to about 5,000 humans. When the horizon's edge arrived, Lisa immediately called for an emergency assembly. In the main habitat dome, colonists gathered, confused and worried. Lisa stood on a platform and told them everything. She showed them recordings of the hierarchs, of the implant scans, of the dead-eyed aliens walking through that perfect station. The Dominion is coming, she finished. They'll offer us technology and peace. But the price is our minds, our freedom to choose, our ability to be truly human. The crowd erupted in angry voices. Some people wanted to fight. Others thought Lisa had doomed them all. An older man named Frank Peters stood up. Even if we refuse, how do we fight them? They have 14,000 star systems. We have one planet and a few colonies. I don't know yet, Lisa admitted, but I know we can't give up before we even try. Over the next week, Lisa traveled to every human colony, spreading the warning. Most people were scared but determined. Humanity had always been stubborn. Being told they had no choice just made them more likely to fight. But Lisa knew Frank was right. Earth's military had maybe 200 warships. Good ships, well-trained crews, but nothing compared to what the Dominion could send. They needed an advantage, something the Dominion wouldn't expect. That's when Helen came to her with an idea. The implants, the doctor said, spreading out data on a screen. They work by suppressing specific brain functions. The aliens can still think, but only in certain ways. They can't imagine alternatives to their current situation. But what if we could disrupt the implants, just temporarily? What would happen? Lisa asked. For a little while, maybe a few hours, their natural brain function would return. They'd be able to think freely, question things. Remember what they used to be before the Dominion changed them. Lisa felt hope for the first time since fleeing the station. Could we build something to do that? A device that broadcasts a disruption signal? Helen nodded slowly. Maybe. But we'd need to get close to a large population of aliens, and the effect would wear off. The implants would reassert control. A few hours might be enough, Lisa said. If enough aliens start questioning, even for a moment, it might plant seeds. Make them look for ways to damage their implants. Start a resistance. They worked for 3 weeks. Helen led a team of scientists building what they called the Awakening device. It looked like a simple cargo container, but inside was a quantum transmitter that could broadcast a disruption signal across several miles. The hard part was getting it into position. Lisa needed to go back into Dominion space, to a place where thousands of aliens gathered. She chose the hub of Harmonious Exchange, a massive trading station near the Dominion's core territories. She took only a small crew this time, people who volunteered knowing they might not return. They used a stealth ship called the Defiant Dawn, built for reconnaissance. It was fast and had systems designed to avoid detection. The journey into Dominion space was terrifying. They saw Dominion patrol ships everywhere, searching for human vessels. Twice they had to hide in asteroid fields, their engines powered down, barely breathing while warships passed nearby. It took 2 weeks to reach the hub. The station was even bigger than the one where Lisa had met the hierarchs. Millions of beings lived and worked there, trading goods from across the galaxy. Ships came and went constantly. How do we get the device inside? Daniel asked as they watched from a safe distance. Lisa had been thinking about this. We disguise it as cargo. Hack into a supply shipment and add our container to the manifest. It gets loaded automatically, delivered to a warehouse in the station's lower levels. We set it to activate 6 hours after delivery, giving us time to get clear. It was risky. A dozen things could go wrong. But they had come too far to turn back. They spent 3 days watching the supply ships, learning the patterns. Then they made their move. Daniel was their best hacker. He broke into a freight company's systems and added their container to a shipment of mining equipment. The container was picked up by an automated drone and loaded onto a supply ship. Lisa and her crew watched tensely as the supply ship docked with the hub. Their container was unloaded with hundreds of others, moved deep into the station's storage levels. They waited, counting down the hours. When the device activated, they were monitoring every communication channel they could access. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then the reports started coming in. Disturbances in the lower levels. Workers stopping their tasks. People standing still, looking confused. Then the confusion turned to questions. An alien worker in the cargo bay suddenly asked why he was loading boxes. What was the point? Had he always done this? A shopkeeper stared at her merchandise and couldn't remember why any of it mattered. A security officer looked at the weapon in his hands and wondered who had told him to carry it. Chaos spread through the hub. Thousands of aliens stopped working. They gathered in groups, talking frantically. Some started crying, others laughed. They were waking up, remembering bits of who they used to be. The Dominion authorities responded quickly. They sent security forces to restore order, which just made things worse. When the guards tried to force workers back to their posts, the workers fought back. Real anger, real resistance, something that hadn't happened in that station for thousands of years. Lisa knew the effect would fade. In a few hours, the implants would reassert control, and most of the aliens would forget this moment of clarity. But some would remember. Some would understand what had been done to them. The defiant dawn slipped away while the station was in chaos. As they jumped back toward human space, Lisa felt exhausted but satisfied. They had struck the first real blow against the Dominion, not with weapons but with truth. Over the following weeks, reports began filtering in, incidents at other stations. Workers damaging their own implants, whispers spreading through the Dominion about the humans who had shown that resistance was possible. But there was bad news too. Earth's government sent an urgent message. A Dominion fleet was coming. 3,000 warships. The hierarchs had decided to make an example of humanity. They would destroy Earth and every human colony, broadcasting the extermination as a warning to any other species that might think about resisting. Lisa sat in her quarters, staring at the message. She had freed a few thousand aliens for a few hours. The cost was going to be the extinction of her entire species. Then another message arrived. This one was from an unknown source, heavily encrypted. When Daniel managed to decode it, Lisa couldn't believe what she was reading. "We are the Broken Chain Collective. We are what you created. Species across the Dominion are removing their implants. We are few, but we are growing. We heard the hierarch's plans for your world. We want to help. Tell us how." More messages followed. Ship captains offering to sabotage Dominion vessels. Scientists sharing secrets about hierarch technology. Former administrators giving locations of weapons caches hidden across the galaxy. Most important was a message from someone named Zara Kinth. She claimed to be a commander of the Vraxian people, a warrior species conquered by the Dominion 2,000 years ago. Her family had secretly kept their military traditions alive, hidden beneath the appearance of compliance. She had 37 warships and 10,000 soldiers. She wanted to fight. The meeting point was in the fringe sectors, a region of space where the Dominion's control had always been weak. Lisa watched as ships began arriving. First came small vessels, single ships crewed by rebels who had escaped their home worlds. Then larger craft appeared, stolen from Dominion shipyards or hidden away for generations. When Zara Kinth's fleet arrived, Lisa felt hope surge through her. 37 warships, each one painted in colors that hadn't been seen in the galaxy for 2,000 years. The Vraxians had kept their culture alive in secret, waiting for a chance like this. The rebel fleet gathered in orbit around a dead moon. Over 200 ships in total, representing 40 different species. It was tiny compared to the Dominion's might, but it was something. A beginning. Lisa called a meeting of all the ship captains. They met via hologram since bringing everyone together physically would take too long. Faces appeared around her, aliens of every shape and size. Some she recognized from her research. Others were species she had never heard of. "Thank you for coming," Lisa began. "I know what you're risking. If we fail, your species will suffer for this. The hierarchs will make examples of entire worlds." A Valorian captain spoke up. His species looked like large beetles, but his voice was clear and determined. "They already destroyed our culture. Our people build ships for the Dominion, but can't remember that we once explored the stars ourselves. We have nothing left to lose." Others nodded or made their species equivalent gestures of agreement. These were people who had lost everything except the capacity to hate their chains. Zara Kinth's hologram stepped forward. She was tall and muscular, with 4 arms and skin that looked like polished stone. "Commander Hayes, you showed us that resistance is possible. Now show us how to win." Lisa displayed a star map. The Dominion fleet heading for Earth will arrive in 30 days. They're taking a direct route, showing their strength. They want everyone to see them coming. That means the Eternal Throne, the home world of the hierarchs, is less defended than usual. "How less defended?" asked a Caldrine merchant captain. His species looked almost human, except for their completely silver eyes. Maybe 500 warships instead of 2,000, Lisa admitted. Still more than we have. We can't win a straight fight. Then what's your plan? Zara asked. Lisa zoomed in on the Eternal Throne system. We don't fight their ships. We slip past them. Small teams infiltrate the planet itself and attack the central synthesis chamber. That's where they control all the compliance implants across the Dominion. If we can destroy it or broadcast what we find there, the entire system collapses. A long silence followed. Finally, a small alien that looked like a floating jellyfish spoke. That's suicide. The synthesis chamber is in the heart of their capital. Even if we reach the planet, we'd never make it inside. We would if they thought we were surrendering, Lisa said. She saw understanding dawn on several faces. We broadcast a message. Say we're delegates seeking mercy. The hierarchs are arrogant. They'll want to show us off, proof that even humans eventually submit. They'll let us land. And then we attack from inside, Zara said with a fierce smile. I like it, the Vraxian way. They spent the next 2 weeks planning. Every detail had to be perfect. The fleet would split into 2 groups. The larger group would stay hidden in a nearby nebula. 20 ships, including the Defiant Dawn, would approach the Eternal Throne broadcasting surrender. Hidden in those 20 ships would be 300 soldiers. The best fighters from each species in the rebellion. They would carry weapons past security using technology stolen from Dominion armories. When they reached the synthesis chamber, they would strike fast and hard. Lisa insisted on leading the ground assault herself. Daniel argued with her for an hour, saying a commander should stay with the fleet. But Lisa was firm. This was my choice from the beginning. I need to see it through. The night before they left, Lisa couldn't sleep. She walked through the Defiant Dawn's corridors, checking equipment, talking quietly with soldiers who were also awake. A young Valorian fighter named Cass asked her if she was scared. Terrified, Lisa admitted, but more scared of what happens if we do nothing. The journey to the Eternal Throne took 8 days. They traveled slowly, broadcasting messages of surrender the entire way. Lisa recorded a statement that was sent ahead. This is Commander Lisa Hayes of humanity. We were wrong to resist. We see now that the Dominion offers only peace and prosperity. We come seeking the mercy of the hierarchs and ask to be accepted into galactic society. The words tasted like poison, but they worked. When the fleet reached the Eternal Throne system, they were given safe passage. Dominion warships escorted them to the planet, proud to display the humans who had finally learned their place. The Eternal Throne was beautiful. The planet was covered in crystalline structures that caught the light of its sun and scattered rainbows across the clouds. Cities stretched across continents, perfect and gleaming. Lisa had seen pictures, but the reality was overwhelming. They were guided to landing platforms near the capital. The central synthesis chamber was a massive pyramid at the city's heart, visible from orbit. That was their target. As they descended, Lisa gathered her assault team. 300 beings packed into cargo holds and maintenance spaces. They wore uniforms stolen from Dominion military units. Their weapons were disguised as ceremonial items or medical equipment. Remember the plan? Lisa said quietly. We surrender. We act compliant. We let them take us into the chamber for the integration ceremony. Then we strike. No matter what happens, that facility has to be destroyed or compromised. They landed smoothly. The doors opened and Lisa led her delegation out onto the platform. Hundreds of Dominion guards were waiting, along with thousands of citizens who had come to watch the humans submit. Coordinator Vess was there, the same blue-skinned alien who had greeted Lisa at her first meeting with the hierarchs. Commander Hayes, I am pleased you have seen reason. The hierarchs await you in the synthesis chamber. Your integration will be broadcast across the Dominion as a lesson in the wisdom of accepting peace. Lisa bowed her head. We are ready. They were led through the city on floating platforms. Crowds watched them pass. Lisa saw the same empty expressions she had seen before. All these people, millions of them, living in a beautiful cage without even knowing it. The synthesis chamber grew larger as they approached. Up close, Lisa could see it was covered in lights that pulsed in complex patterns. Data flowing across its surface. the thoughts and memories and free will of trillions of beings, all controlled from this one place. They entered through massive doors. The interior was cold and filled with machinery that hummed with power. Thousands of technicians worked at stations, monitoring screens full of data. At the center of it all stood the four hierarchs on their platforms. "Welcome, humans," the jellyfish hierarch said. Its voice echoed off the walls. "You have made the right choice. Come forward. We will begin the integration process." Lisa walked forward with her delegation. All around them, Dominion guards stood ready. This was the moment. If they were going to be discovered, it would be now. Helen was beside her, hidden among the other humans. The doctor had a scanner concealed in her uniform. As they walked deeper into the chamber, she was recording everything: the layout, the systems, the security measures. They reached the center of the room. The hierarchs looked down at them with what might have been satisfaction. "Kneel," the crystalline hierarch commanded. Lisa knelt. Her entire team knelt. It was the hardest thing she had ever done. "Your species will be modified," the metal hierarch said. "Your aggression will be removed. Your territorial instincts will be suppressed. You will be happy and compliant. You will thank us for this gift." The old humanoid hierarch raised a hand. Machines descended from the ceiling, reaching toward the kneeling humans with instruments designed to inject the first stage of genetic modification. Lisa counted silently. 3, 2, 1. She stood up and pulled a weapon from her uniform. Around her, 300 soldiers did the same. The ceremonial hall erupted in chaos as the rebellion struck at the heart of the Dominion's power. The fighting was brutal. Dominion guards had energy shields and advanced weapons, but the rebels had surprise and desperation. Lisa fought her way toward the control center, while Zara and her Vraxian warriors held off reinforcements. Helen reached a terminal and plugged in her equipment. "I'm in," she shouted over the sound of weapons fire. "Lisa, you need to see this." Lisa ran to her side. On the screen was data that made her blood run cold. The compliance implants were just the beginning. The hierarchs had inserted genetic markers into every modified species. Markers that could be activated remotely. "It's a kill switch," Helen said, her voice shaking. "They can kill billions of beings with a single command. That's how they've maintained control. Even if species remove the implants, the hierarchs can still destroy them." Lisa stared at the data. The entire galactic order was built on a hostage situation that spanned generations. The hierarchs didn't just control minds. They held the power of life and death over every bay. Helen's fingers flew across the terminal. "Broadcasting now. Every channel, every frequency. The entire Dominion will receive this in seconds." Lisa turned back to the fight. Zara was bleeding from multiple wounds but still standing, her forearms wielding weapons in a pattern that was both deadly and beautiful. The Vraxian warriors fought with a ferocity that came from 2,000 years of suppressed rage. Around the chamber, Dominion guards were falling back. Not because they were losing, but because they were stopping. Lisa saw guards freeze mid-attack, confusion spreading across their faces. They were receiving the broadcast, learning the truth about what had been done to them. The four hierarchs remained on their platforms, unmoved by the chaos. The jellyfish being's voice boomed across the chamber. "You think this changes anything? You think truth matters? We have controlled this galaxy for 50,000 years. We will simply activate the kill switches and start over with new species." The metal hierarch raised what looked like a hand. Energy gathered around it, pulsing with deadly intent. Lisa realized with horror that they were actually going to do it. Kill trillions of beings just to maintain their power. But then something unexpected happened. The technicians in the chamber, the beings who had been working at their stations monitoring the control systems, turned on the hierarchs. All across the room, workers began sabotaging their own equipment, pulling out cables, smashing screens, overloading systems. One technician, a small creature that looked like a floating eye, spoke directly to the hierarchs. "We just learned what you did to our ancestors. What you've been doing to all of us. You gave us the knowledge to maintain these systems. Now we're using that knowledge to destroy them." The metal hierarch's energy blast went wild as power fluctuations hit the control systems. It struck the ceiling instead, bringing down debris. The crystalline hierarch tried to access backup systems but found them already destroyed by the rebelling technicians. Lisa saw their chance. Everyone out! The whole building is becoming unstable. The rebel soldiers retreated toward the exits, carrying their wounded. Dominion guards, confused and uncertain, didn't pursue. Some were even helping, holding doors open for the fleeing rebels. As Lisa ran through the corridors, explosions rocked the building behind her. The technicians had set the systems to overload. The central synthesis chamber, the heart of Dominion control for 50 millennia, was tearing itself apart. They reached the landing platforms where their ships waited. The city around them was in chaos. The broadcast had reached everyone. Billions of beings on the Eternal Throne were learning the truth simultaneously. Riots were breaking out. Some citizens were attacking Dominion authorities. Others were simply standing still, overwhelmed by the revelation. "Get everyone aboard," Lisa shouted. Wounded soldiers were carried onto ships. Zara was the last one up the ramp, her stone-like skin cracked and bleeding, but her eyes fierce with triumph. The ships lifted off as more explosions shook the city. Lisa looked back and saw the synthesis chamber collapsing in on itself. A pillar of light shot into the sky as containment fields failed. The pyramid that had controlled trillions of minds was becoming a funeral pyre. "Commander, we have a problem," Daniel called from the pilot's seat. "Dominion warships are breaking formation. They're not pursuing us. They're attacking each other." Lisa moved to the cockpit window. In orbit above the planet, the Dominion fleet was falling apart. Ships were firing on their former allies. Captains who had learned the truth about the kill switches were turning against the hierarchs. Others were trying to escape. A few were trying to restore order, but there was no order left to restore. The rebel fleet emerged from the nebula where they had been hiding, but there was nothing for them to fight. The Dominion was destroying itself from within. "Get us clear of the system," Lisa ordered. "Maximum speed." They jumped to faster-than-light travel just as the Eternal Throne's sun flared. Lisa didn't understand what she was seeing at first. Then Helen explained, her voice hollow with shock. The hierarchs activated a singularity weapon. They're destroying their own homeworld rather than let it fall to the rebellion. The screen showed the planet collapsing in on itself, pulled into a black hole that the hierarchs had triggered. The city, the chamber, everything within 3 light-years was being consumed, including the hierarchs themselves. Lisa felt numb. They had won, but at what cost? The leaders of the Dominion had chosen suicide over surrender, taking their entire home system with them. Over the next hours, reports flooded in from across the Dominion. The broadcast had reached every corner of the galaxy. Species that had been compliant for millennia were rising up. Some were celebrating their liberation. Others were descending into violence. Entire sectors were going dark as infrastructure collapsed. The fleet that had been sent to destroy Earth had turned back, its captains fighting among themselves about what to do. Some wanted to complete their mission. Others refused to follow orders from dead masters. The fleet tore itself apart before it reached human space. Earth was safe. Humanity had survived. But the galaxy was burning. Lisa called another meeting of the rebel captains. Faces appeared around her, looking exhausted and shaken. "What do we do now?" Zara asked. "The Dominion is collapsing. Without central authority, there will be chaos, wars, famine, species settling old grudges." "Some worlds are already falling apart," the Valorian captain reported. "Planets that depended on Dominion resources are running out of food and medicine. There are calls for someone to take control, to restore order." Several faces turned to look at Lisa. She felt the weight of their expectations. "No," she said firmly. "We didn't tear down one empire just to build another. That's how the Dominion started. Species that thought they knew what was best for everyone else." "Then what?" asked the Cauldron merchant captain. "Do we just let billions suffer?" "We help," Lisa said, "but we don't rule. We offer aid to species that want it. We share resources. We mediate disputes. But we don't force anyone to accept our help or our way of doing things." "That sounds like chaos," someone said. "Maybe," Lisa admitted, "but it's free chaos. People getting to make their own choices, even if those choices lead to mistakes. That's what we fought for. The meeting lasted hours. They debated, argued, sometimes shouted at each other. It was messy and frustrating. But Lisa realized that this was what freedom looked like. People with different ideas trying to find common ground, without anyone forcing a solution. Eventually, they agreed on a framework. The rebel fleet would transform into a humanitarian coalition. They would provide aid, facilitate communication, help establish trade networks between species. But they would not govern. Any species that wanted to join this coalition would do so as equals. They called it the Free Assembly. Not because it assembled beings under one government, but because it was a free gathering of independent peoples. Over the following weeks, the scope of the crisis became clear. About 60% of Dominion species welcomed their liberation and began working to rebuild their societies. 20% immediately fell into conflict, either internal civil wars or external battles with neighbors. The remaining 20% tried to maintain the old Dominion structure, either because they genuinely preferred it or because they feared change. Helen and teams of scientists from dozens of species began working on the genetic kill switches. It would take years, maybe decades, to develop treatments that could safely remove the markers. But the work had begun. Lisa found herself coordinating relief efforts, sending ships to deliver food and medicine, trying to prevent wars before they started. It was exhausting and often frustrating. For every problem they solved, two more appeared. One night, 6 months after the fall of the Eternal Throne, Lisa sat alone in her quarters on the Defiant Dawn. They were orbiting a planet where 3 species were arguing over territorial boundaries. The negotiations had been going on for weeks with little progress. Daniel found her staring out the window at the planet below. "We could just impose a solution," he said quietly. "We have the ships. We could force them to accept a compromise." "We could," Lisa agreed, "and then we'd be no different than the hierarchs. Just another group of beings deciding what's best for everyone else. Even if it means watching them fight? Even then, freedom means letting people make mistakes. Letting them figure things out for themselves, even if it takes longer and costs more than forcing a solution." Daniel was silent for a moment. "Do you think we did the right thing? Destroying the Dominion?" Lisa thought about all the suffering she had seen in the past months. The conflicts, the food shortages, the species struggling to adapt to freedom after millennia of control. Then she thought about the empty eyes of those compliant aliens, walking through their perfect cage without knowing what they had lost. "Yes," she said, "we did the right thing. It's not perfect. It's not even always good, but it's real. These people are making their own choices now, for better or worse. That's worth the chaos." The negotiations on the planet below finally reached 3 years past after the fall of the Eternal Throne. Lisa stood in the assembly hall on a space station called Unity Point, watching delegates from 200 species argue about trade regulations. It was loud, chaotic, and sometimes devolved into shouting matches that required translators to work overtime. She loved every minute of it. The Free Assembly had grown beyond anything Lisa had imagined. What started as a loose coalition of rebel ships had become a gathering place where species could meet as equals. There were no rulers here, no hierarchies. Just representatives trying to solve problems together. It wasn't always successful. Some debates lasted months. Others ended with species walking away frustrated. But the important thing was that everyone had a voice. No one was forced to comply. Zara approached her during a break in the sessions. The Vraxian leader looked tired but satisfied. 10 more species joined yesterday, she reported, including 3 that initially tried to maintain Dominion-style governments. Their people voted to abandon the old ways and join us instead. "How many does that make total?" Lisa asked. 7,342 species, almost half of the old Dominion. The rest are either independent or part of smaller coalitions. Lisa nodded. That was better than she had hoped. After the initial chaos, she had expected the galaxy to fragment into thousands of isolated empires. Instead, many species had chosen cooperation over isolation. But not everyone was happy with the new order. A faction called the Restoration Movement wanted to rebuild the Dominion under new leadership. They claimed that the galaxy needed central authority to prevent the chaos and conflicts that had erupted after liberation. They had gained support from about 1,000 species, mostly ones that had been in the Dominion's higher tiers and lost status when it fell. The movement had started making aggressive moves, trying to force smaller species back into compliance. The Free Assembly had to decide how to respond. Use force to stop them? That felt too much like becoming what they had destroyed. Do nothing. That meant abandoning species that wanted freedom. Lisa called a special session of the Assembly's Coordinating Council. Representatives from 50 key species gathered, including Zara and several humans from Earth's government. The Restoration movement is attacking neutral species, Lisa began, displaying reports on screens around the room. 3 colonies have been invaded in the past month. They're using old Dominion weapons and tactics. We need to decide how the Assembly responds. We fight them, Zara said immediately. We didn't tear down one empire just to let another rise. But if we attack, aren't we forcing our way of life on them? Asked a Valorian delegate named Moss. They believe in central authority. If we use violence to stop them, we're proving they're right about needing power to maintain order. The debate went on for hours. Some wanted military intervention. Others insisted on diplomatic solutions. A few suggested doing nothing and letting the situation resolve itself naturally. Finally, Lisa proposed a compromise. We don't attack the Restoration movement, but we do defend species that ask for our help. We make it clear that any species that wants to remain independent will have our support. The movement can exist, can even recruit species that want to join them voluntarily. But the moment they use force, we respond. It wasn't a perfect solution. It meant more conflicts, more border skirmishes, but it also meant respecting both freedom and self-determination. The council voted to accept Lisa's proposal. Over the next year, the policy was tested repeatedly. The Restoration movement tried to expand, but found that conquering species protected by the Free Assembly was too costly. Eventually, they settled into a rival coalition, maintaining their hierarchical structure but limiting their expansion to species that joined willingly. The galaxy had effectively split into 3 groups: the Free Assembly, where species gathered as equals; the Restoration movement, where species submitted to central authority; and thousands of independent worlds that chose isolation. It was messy and complicated. But it was also stable in a way the Old Dominion never was. The stability came from choice rather than force. Meanwhile, Helen's research continued. The genetic kill switches proved incredibly complex to remove. Each species had different markers, all intertwined with their DNA, in ways that made simple removal dangerous. But progress was being made. The first successful treatments were administered to volunteers from 7 different species. The markers were neutralized without harming the subjects. Lisa visited Helen's laboratory on Unity Point 6 months into the treatment trials. The doctor looked older, worn down by years of intensive work, but her eyes were bright with hope. "We can do this," Helen said, showing Lisa the data. "It will take decades to treat every being in the galaxy, but it's possible. The hierarch's genetic chains can be broken." "How many have been treated so far?" Lisa asked. "About 15,000 individuals across 40 species. All successful, no complications. We're ready to expand the program." Lisa felt tears forming. This was the last piece. Not just freeing minds, but freeing bodies too. Removing the hierarch's final hold on the species they had enslaved. They announced the treatment program at the next assembly gathering. The response was overwhelming. Millions of beings volunteered immediately. Medical ships were dispatched across free assembly space, carrying the treatments to every species that wanted them. Not everyone wanted the treatment. Some beings, particularly from species that had been in the Dominion for many thousands of years, feared what would happen if their genetics changed. The assembly respected their choice. Freedom meant the freedom to remain as you were, even if others didn't understand that choice. As the years passed, Lisa found herself taking on a new role. She became the assembly's first speaker, not a ruler, but a coordinator. Someone who facilitated discussions and helped build consensus. It was frustrating work. Nothing happened quickly in the assembly. Every decision required endless debate, but she had learned that this was the point. Fast decisions made by powerful individuals led to tyranny. Slow decisions made by consensus led to freedom. She chose freedom, even when it was inefficient. One day, 10 years after the fall of the Dominion, Lisa received a message from Earth. Her sister Kate, who she hadn't seen in over a decade, had died peacefully at age 70. She had lived long enough to see humanity become an important voice in galactic affairs. Long enough to know that Lisa's choice to reject the accord had saved their species. The message included a recording. Kate's face appeared, older and tired, but smiling. "Lisa, if you're watching this, I'm gone. I wanted you to know I was proud of you. Everyone thought you were crazy when you rejected the hierarchs. Some people still think you doomed us to endless conflict instead of accepting peace. But I saw what you saw. That beautiful cage, those empty eyes. You chose harder path because it was the right path. Thank you for giving humanity the chance to be free, even if freedom is messy." Lisa watched the recording alone in her quarters, crying quietly. The weight of all her choices, all the suffering and chaos that had followed her decision, pressed down on her. Had it been worth it? All the death? All the conflict? She thought about the assembly hall, where species argued and debated and sometimes walked away angry. She thought about the beings who had been freed from their implants, who could finally think and question and dream again. She thought about children being born across the galaxy, who would never know the Dominion's control. Yes, it had been worth it. Lisa returned to work the next day. There were always problems to solve. A dispute over mining rights between 3 species. A request for aid from a planet suffering famine. A proposal to establish educational exchanges so species could learn from each other. She coordinated meetings, facilitated discussions, and helped build consensus. It was slow, frustrating work. But it was also the most important work she had ever done. 20 years after the fall of the Dominion, the Free Assembly held a gathering to mark the anniversary. Representatives from 9,000 species attended. The assembly hall was packed beyond capacity, with millions more watching through holographic transmission. Lisa was asked to give a speech. She stood before the gathering, feeling the weight of her years. She was 63 now, her hair gray, her movements slower than they once were. But her voice was still strong. 20 years ago, I made a choice that changed the galaxy, she began. I rejected peace because the price was our freedom. Many people have asked me if I regret that choice. If I regret all the suffering and chaos that followed. She paused, looking at the assembled faces. So many species, so many different beings, all gathered together as equals. I don't regret it, not for a moment. Because what we have now, imperfect as it is, belongs to us. Every success, every failure, every conflict, and every peace treaty. It's ours. We made these choices freely. We stumbled. We fought. We learned. We became truly alive. The Dominion offered stability, but it was the stability of death. A beautiful corpse that never changed, never grew. What we have now is the chaos of life. And life, real life, is messy and difficult and painful, but it's also beautiful and meaningful and worth every struggle. So when people ask if freedom was worth the price, I tell them to look around. Look at what we've built together. Not perfect, not easy, but ours. That's the answer. That's always been the answer. Lisa Hayes was 71 years old when she realized she was dying. The doctors on Unity Point were gentle when they gave her the news. Cancer, spreading through her body faster than treatments could stop it. She had maybe 6 months left. She took the news calmly. She had lived longer than most soldiers expected to, and she had seen more than any human in history. The galaxy had been transformed during her lifetime, and she had been at the center of that transformation. But there was still work to do. 6 months was enough time to make sure the Free Assembly could continue without her. The first thing she did was announce her condition publicly. She didn't want rumors or speculation. In a broadcast to the entire assembly, she explained that she would be stepping down as speaker when she could no longer perform her duties. She encouraged representatives to begin thinking about who should coordinate the assembly after her. The response was overwhelming. Messages poured in from across the galaxy. Species she had helped, beings she had inspired, all expressing gratitude and sorrow. Some offered advanced medical treatments that might extend her life. Lisa politely declined. She had seen enough of beings trying to cheat death. It never ended well. Instead, she focused on preparing her successors. The assembly had grown too large for any single person to coordinate effectively. Lisa proposed dividing the speaker's responsibilities among a council of 5 beings from different species. They would rotate leadership duties, ensuring no single voice dominated. The proposal was debated for 2 months. Some representatives wanted to keep the single speaker system, fearing that a council would be too slow and inefficient. Others worried that dividing power would lead to internal conflicts. Eventually, a compromise was reached. A council of 7, not 5, with decisions requiring agreement from at least 5 members. Lisa helped select the first council members. Zara was an obvious choice, representing the warrior species that had been among the first to join the rebellion. A Valorian engineer named Kess was chosen for his skill at building consensus. A Kaldrine diplomat, a human scientist, and 3 representatives from species Lisa had never heard of before the revolution rounded out the council. She spent her remaining energy teaching them everything she had learned. How to facilitate discussions without dominating them. How to recognize when a debate had reached its natural conclusion. How to mediate between species with completely different values and communication styles. Most importantly, how to resist the temptation to impose solutions instead of letting groups find their own answers. The hardest thing about leadership in the assembly, Lisa told them during one training session, is accepting that you can't fix everything. Sometimes species make choices you think are wrong. Sometimes they reject good advice. You have to let them. The moment you start forcing what you think is right, you become what we destroyed. As her health declined, Lisa began receiving visitors. Old friends from the early days of the rebellion. Soldiers who had fought beside her in the synthesis chamber. Scientists who had worked with Helen to break the genetic chains. Diplomats from species across the galaxy who wanted to thank her personally. Daniel Cooper came to see her. He was in his 70s now too, retired from active service but still working as an advisor to Earth's government. They sat together in Lisa's quarters, looking out at the stars through the large window. "Do you remember when we first entered Dominion space?" Daniel asked. "We thought we were going to meet enlightened beings who would teach us the secrets of the universe." Lisa smiled. "Instead, we found the most sophisticated prison system in history. Trillions of inmates who didn't even know they were prisoners. Was it better before? The Dominion era? No wars, no famines, everyone content?" "No," Lisa said firmly. "Contentment without choice is just another word for death. What we have now is better because it's real. The suffering is real, but so is the joy. The conflicts are real, but so are the friendships and alliances that form when species work together by choice." Daniel nodded slowly. "I just wanted to hear you say it one more time, that it was worth it." It was worth it. Helen visited frequently during Lisa's last months. The doctor had aged too, her hair completely white, her movements careful and measured. But her mind was as sharp as ever. She brought updates on the genetic treatment program. "We've treated over 3 billion beings so far," Helen reported. 42 species are now completely free of the hierarch's genetic markers. Another 100 are in the process. It will take another 50 years to reach everyone who wants treatment, but we'll get there." "What about the species that don't want treatment?" Lisa asked. "About 15% have chosen to keep the markers. Their choice, and we respect it. Freedom means being free to remain as you are." Helen paused. "Lisa, there's something else. We've been analyzing the hierarch's genetic database. We found references to species that existed before the Dominion. Hundreds of civilizations that were completely erased, not conquered or integrated. Erased, their entire genetic codes deleted from existence." Lisa felt cold despite the warm room. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because it's important. What we destroyed wasn't just an empire. It was a genocide machine that had been running for 50,000 years. Every species in the Old Dominion existed only because the hierarchs allowed it. Any that resisted too strongly were simply eliminated. No records, no descendants, nothing. They were removed from history itself. How many species? At least 3,000 that we've found evidence of. Probably more. Lisa was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Make sure that information becomes public. Not as propaganda against the old order, but as a reminder. This is what happens when beings decide they have the right to control others. It always ends in death, even if that death wears a beautiful face." Helen promised to see it done. As her final weeks approached, Lisa asked to be moved to a smaller station in a quiet system. She didn't want to die on Unity Point, where every moment would be documented and analyzed. She wanted peace. Only a handful of people accompanied her. Daniel, Helen, Zara, and a few close friends from the early rebellion. They set up a small habitat on a station orbiting a blue star, far from major trade routes. Lisa spent her days looking at the stars and reviewing messages from across the galaxy. Students who had written papers about the rebellion. Children who had been named after her. Entire worlds that had declared holidays honoring the day the Dominion fell. One message particularly moved her. It was from a being on a planet she had never heard of. A species called the Methrin, who had been in the Dominion's lowest tier for 8,000 years. The message was simple. My grandfather died never knowing he was a slave. My father died knowing but unable to fight. I am raising my children in freedom. Thank you for giving us this chance. Lisa cried when she read it. All the pain, all the chaos, all the impossible choices. This was what it had been for. So that beings could raise their children in freedom. Her last day was quiet. She was too weak to leave her bed, but she could still see the stars through the window. Helen and Daniel sat on either side of her, holding her hands. Zara stood at the foot of the bed, her forearms crossed in a Vraxian gesture of respect. It's strange, Lisa said softly. I spent most of my life fighting the Dominion, fighting for the Assembly, fighting to build something better. Now that it's ending, I feel peaceful. You succeeded, Helen said gently. The Assembly is stable. The treatments are working. Species across the galaxy are free. You did what you set out to do. Did I? Lisa asked. There are still conflicts, still suffering. The restoration movement controls 1,000 systems. Some species are worse off than they were under the Dominion. But they're free to be worse off, Zara said. Free to make mistakes, free to learn, free to become whatever they choose. That's what you gave us. Not perfection, possibility. Lisa smiled. I like that. Possibility. She was quiet for a moment. What will they say about me? In 100 years when everyone who knew me is gone. They'll say you were the human who broke the galaxy's chains, Daniel said. They'll say you were stubborn and difficult and refused to accept easy answers, Helen added with a slight smile. They'll say you showed us that freedom is worth fighting for, Zara finished, even when the cost seems too high. Especially then. Lisa felt herself growing tired. The room was fading, becoming soft and distant. Tell them something else too. Tell them that I was scared every single day, that I doubted my choices constantly, that I was just a person who saw something wrong and decided she couldn't live with staying silent. Her friends promised they would. Tell them that anyone can do what I did. You don't need to be special or brave or certain. You just need to care enough to try, that's all. Just care and try. Lisa closed her eyes and thought about everything she had seen. The empty eyes of slaves who didn't know they were slaves. The moment of awakening when they realized the truth. The chaos and pain of building something new from the ruins of the old. The slow, difficult work of teaching beings who had been controlled for millennia how to make their own choices. It had been worth it. Every difficult moment, every impossible choice, every night spent wondering if she had made the wrong decision. It had all been worth it. Her last thought was of Earth, the small blue planet where her journey had begun. She hoped humanity would continue to be a voice for freedom in the galaxy. Not ruling, not dominating, just standing as an example that even the smallest species could change everything if they refused to accept tyranny. Lisa Hayes died peacefully as the blue star rose over the station. Her friends stayed with her until the end, then sat in silence for a long time, mourning and celebrating a life that had changed the galaxy. Her funeral was attended by representatives from over 10,000 species. They came not because they were ordered to, but because they chose to. That choice, that simple act of free will, was Lisa's true monument. 50 years later, a young girl named Emma sat in a classroom on Earth, studying history. Her teacher was explaining the Dominion era and the Great Liberation. Emma raised her hand. "Teacher, why did Commander Hayes reject the Accord? Life would have been easier under the Dominion. No wars, no conflicts, everyone happy." The teacher, an older woman who had lived through the transition, smiled. Because Commander Hayes understood something important. Being alive means more than being comfortable. It means having the freedom to choose your own path, to make your own mistakes, to be truly yourself. The Dominion offered peace, but it was the peace of death. Commander Hayes chose life, with all its messy, painful, beautiful possibilities. Emma thought about this. Was she right? "Look around you," the teacher said. "We live in a galaxy where thousands of species work together by choice, where beings from different worlds can be friends or rivals or anything in between, where your future is yours to decide. What do you think?" Emma looked out the window at the stars, where human ships traveled freely among alien vessels, where messages flowed between worlds without anyone controlling what could be said, where children of 100 species grew up never knowing what it meant to be a slave. "I think she was right," Emma said quietly. The teacher nodded. "So do I. And now it's our responsibility to protect what she gave us. Freedom isn't something you win once and keep forever. It's something you have to choose every day, defend every day, practice every day. That's Commander Hayes' real legacy. Not that she freed us, but that she showed us how to stay free." Emma returned to her studies, but she kept glancing at the stars. Somewhere out there, billions of beings were making their own choices, writing their own stories, living truly free lives. All because one human woman had looked at a beautiful prison and said no. The era of the celestial dominion was over. The age of free choice, with all its chaos and wonder, continued. And Lisa Hayes, who had started it all by refusing to kneel, was remembered not as a perfect hero, but as a person who had cared enough to try. That was enough. That had always been enough. The assembly hall erupted in applause and cheers and the various sounds different species made to show approval. Lisa stood there, feeling the weight of 20 years of choices, and allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. She had toppled an empire. She had sparked a revolution. But more importantly, she had given billions of beings the chance to be themselves, to make their own mistakes, to write their own stories. That night, as Lisa prepared for bed, she received one more message. It was from a young Valorian student on a distant world. The message was simple. "Thank you for giving us the chance to be free. We won't waste it." Lisa smiled and went to sleep, knowing that the future of the galaxy was in good hands. Not her hands, not any single person's hands, but in the hands of trillions of beings who were finally free to choose their own destinies. Compromise 3 weeks later. It wasn't a perfect solution, and all 3 species were unhappy with parts of it. But it was theirs. They had created it themselves, without anyone forcing them to comply. Lisa marked it as a small victory and moved on to the next crisis. There would always be another crisis, another problem to solve. That was the price of freedom. But as she watched the ships of the Free Assembly working alongside former Dominion species, helping without controlling, she felt something she hadn't felt in months. Hope. In the Dominion. "Can you broadcast this?" Lisa asked. "Everything. The kill switch data, the implant protocols, all of it. But if I do, the hierarchs might activate the kill switches immediately." Lisa looked around. Her soldiers were dying. More guards were pouring into the chamber. They had minutes at best. She made the hardest choice of her life. Broadcast it all. Lisa realized something incredible was happening. She hadn't just inspired humans. She had sparked the first multi-species rebellion in galactic history. Aliens who had been slaves for millennia were remembering how to fight. She sent a reply to all of them. "The Dominion fleet is heading for Earth. but the hierarchs themselves are vulnerable. If we strike at their homeworld while their main fleet is away, we can end this. Meet me at these coordinates. We're going to destroy the Eternal Throne. The responses came quickly. Yes, we're coming. We'll fight. Lisa looked at her crew. They were exhausted, scared, but determined. We started a revolution, she said quietly. Now we have to finish it. Uled out a transmitter and activated it. Her message began broadcasting on all Dominion channels. My name is Commander Lisa Hayes of Earth. I speak to every species in the Dominion. You are not free. You are controlled. The hierarchs have put devices in your brains that stop you from seeing the truth. We will not join you in this cage no matter how beautiful it is. Alarms blared. Guards rushed into the chamber. Lisa's team ran back to their ship. They barely made it to the horizon's edge before Dominion ships began pursuing them. As they jumped into faster-than-light travel, Lisa knew she had started something that couldn't be stopped. She had declared war on the most powerful empire in the galaxy, and she had no idea if humanity could survive what came next.